I've been thinking about these two episodes, All In and The Hardest Thing, for such a long time, to the point that I really wanted to review these episodes, especially when it came to reviewing them for Summerpalooza 4 last year, but due to being overwhelmed, I wasn't really prepared to review these episodes, judging of how that it just reminds me of how animation hasn't been the same when it came to other shows. I want to make this clear. These two episodes are great, they're perfect, and really memorable to sit through when it comes to finales. However, they were bad timing for me. But I'm gonna be saving that for next week's video. Since that today is the 2-year anniversary of All In, while next week is gonna be the 2-year anniversary of The Hardest Thing, I'm gonna be reviewing those episodes on Tuesday, since May 7th and May 14th are on a Tuesday, so keep in mind, I really felt like that this is the perfect way to talk about the episodes for their anniversaries. When it came to my binge watching experience from this show, when it came to the first season where I wasn't highly into it back in 2020, but into the second season I was really into it, and then in the third season I managed to watch newer episodes from the show to the point that I was actually looking forward to the finale, but then again, due to everything that's been happening outside of this show, and it has nothing to do with the production, it was difficult for me to be invested with the finale of Amphibia. Because to tell you the truth, Amphibia, unlike the other cartoons, had the perfect amount of episodes, all the while being treated as the most respect when it comes to animation. This is literally what a show needs when it comes to full circle. This nearly 50-minute special, All In, really made me appreciate on the fact that this show didn't got anything in the way when it comes to corporate businesses and of course creative decisions. Believe me when I say this, is that whenever I think about this episode, when it comes to the main characters teaming with each other and facing off the antagonists along with his army, it reminds me of the climax from the Avengers film when it came to the Avengers working together to face off Loki and his army. All the while, it leads to great moments centering around nearly every single character in this 50-minute special. Believe me, when it came to the planters' trauma of the birds that killed their parents, mainly Sprig and Polly, really gave me so much inspiration on the fact that this show is really capable of having everything that it needs in order to make a perfect 3-season show. Believe me when I say this, is that every time that we get an episode centering around this, if it happened earlier, it wouldn't be as impactful. Including the main 3 human characters, Anne, Sasha, and Marcy. Trust me when I say this, is that every time that I think about these 3 characters for how they were developed when the series progressed, it really shows that if it cuts any development due to what the Owl House went through, then I can guarantee you that it would be difficult for me to find more sympathy or closure when it comes to all 3 of these characters. Believe me, the closure is still there even 2 years ago, it's just that I wasn't waiting for it due to the production of the Owl House. And trust me when I say this, even though that it has nothing to do with Amphibia whatsoever, it still affects animation for me personally. In the beginning of this special, the principal who caught Anne and her friends playing K-pop on the school's radio, not really radio, but the speakers, she wants Anne to do an essay on who she wants to be. And considering of how Anne was developed throughout these 3 seasons, it really shows that this really made a lot more sense to me after rewatching this special. Sasha, who was once a manipulative person who did bad deeds, who manipulated Anne and Sasha when it comes to her own doing in the finale of Season 1, ends up becoming friends in the events of the finale of Season 2, and here she is along with Grime facing off Darcy, which for me personally really adds stakes a lot more knowing full well that the device controlling Marcy is a lot more chaotic considering of how inside of Marcy's brain is full of escapism in fantasy. And believe me when I say this, is that for how Marcy went through so much trauma and making things worse for the other characters by preventing them to go back home, all because that her parents are moving and she has to come along. Trust me when I say this, she can't be able to move forward in the position that she's in, and with a device in her head, on her head, then believe me, it would be a lot more devastating and a lot more dangerous if Marcy was still in control in the following episode, which is the finale. Because as far as I'm concerned, despite if we're not going to have that great climactic battle for the following episode centering around the calamity powers of Anne, Marcy, and Sasha, I can't imagine how the outcome would have been a lot more serious when it came to Marcy dying. Believe me when I say this, every time I think of Marcy dying in the alternative world of the hardest thing, it was showcase of how much that Marcy still means so much to Anne and Sasha, or the fact that it's indicating that you shouldn't take fantasy the better of you, knowing full well that it would lead to extreme consequences. Even though that there were consequences regardless, it really shows that Marcy would have turned out a lot more differently if she still has the helmet on. The point that I'm trying to make is that with the possibilities centering around this finale, there was still potential, but at the same time, in comparison to the finale of The Outhouse, you can tell that there was so much potential that they were required, but they had no other choice due to the position that they were in. And since that this show is actually in the vision of Disney when it comes to the branding, I really felt like that it's probably their own perspective that they actually see this as Disney related, while The Outhouse, in all honesty, is Disney related in all perspectives, but not the Disney branding. Believe me, there are multiple reasons onto why The Outhouse was cut short, but as far as I'm concerned, I can instantly say for a fact that it is still unfinished in comparison to Amphibia. One of the biggest moments in this entire show, and I do mean it that way, is after the battle of Anne versus King Andreas. Believe me when I say this, is that when every single character gets so much development and how they're executed perfectly, it really shows that there was nothing in the way when it comes to this show. Leaf, who is a longtime friend of King Andreas, had a letter that she wasn't able to give it to King Andreas since that she escaped. And to tell you the truth, this moment, along with the battle between him and Anne, mainly King Andreas, along with the battle of Darcy and Sasha facing each other with K-pop happening in the background, believe me when I say this, the execution in this 50-minute special really indicates that they will really wanted the great moments of memorability, all the while having a really heartwarming conclusion when it comes to the climax. Whenever I think about Leaf, when it comes to the flashbacks centering around King Andreas' backstory, believe me, it just feels like that King Andreas is so difficult to work with, but it's easier for him to get the whole message by having a letter that he wasn't able to read. And the fact that Sprig and Mr. X figured this out right away really shows that everyone is understanding with each other the right way. And even though it can apply to good written shows, this is top tier perfection when it comes to execution and the development of the characters themselves. In all honesty, whenever I think about this, it just makes me think of what the other shows would have been capable of. I mean, granted, it would never reach top tier material as this, but at the same time, in their own efforts, they would have made things a lot more better when it comes to how we wanted more from the shows. And considering that with this show only having 3 seasons, it's the perfect amount for a show. And trust me when I say this, Even though that some shows should at least have 4 seasons when it comes to sitcoms, all the while when it comes to cartoons, it depends on the quality of the writing. Amphibia, in my opinion, despite with a few bad episodes, still manages to become one of the best Disney Channel cartoons ever made. I know it's hard to have a cartoon be greenlit, since I'm fully aware that cartoons take years to make, knowing full well that before the full season there will always have to be decisions and planning when it comes to having your cartoon come to life. And whenever I think about Amphibia, it shows that there was a lot of passion when it came to a vision when it comes to originality. Believe me, shows like this and some others really gave me the passion that originality is what's really important. And it's really a shame that when other shows try to do that, mainly The Owl House, it still doesn't get the attention. And even though it didn't have the SpongeBob effect, since that Disney Channel didn't have a popular cartoon similar to SpongeBob, at the very least, it's just really depressing that cartoons, when it comes to The Owl House and The Ghost of Martin McGee, just don't get much attention when it comes to the potential that they would have gotten if they were treated in the same respect as this show. I only watched this special 2 times, the first when it aired 2 years ago, and this for preparation for this review. And as far as I'm concerned, every time I think about these elements of how they were better executed, it just made me use hope on how the cartoon industry just isn't gaining much respect when it comes to animation, which really shows that this decade just hasn't been the greatest, and since that this show is still considered a 2010s cartoon in comparison to The Owl House, which is actually a 2020s cartoon, I can't imagine what the show would have been like if it had the same treatment as The Owl House. Believe me, we would probably be a lot more disappointed and really unsatisfied when it came to the execution of what it would have been instead of what it should have been. Because as far as I'm concerned, this finale, well not really finale, but this special along with the finale is literally everything of what this show needs. Getting the right amount of episodes, 3 seasons, and the time it needs without anything in the way. Granted, it's debatable if most of the decisions were a lot more acceptable in comparison to the Owl House's decisions, but as far as I'm concerned, I really find it difficult to find positive when it comes to Disney material, when it comes to the corporate businesses. As far as I'm concerned, I'm fully aware of the whole Disney Plus situation and all that, and I only focus on the cartoons. I do watch a few movies here and there, but at the same time, not really a Disney singing fan, as in the musical movies that they make. As for the finale, which is the hardest thing that we're going to be talking about next week, it's literally a showcase of what a finale of a cartoon should be without anything in the way, similar to this 50-minute special. I'm giving All In a 9.75 out of 10, and I'm finally going to be talking about the finale of this show after 2 long years.